impoverished couple. They were so poor that a honeymoon had always been an unattainable luxury. The old man apologizes to his wife, asking what she would want to do if they were given a chance to be young once more. For her, however, simply being at peace and talking with him like this was more than enough. The apple tree they had planted to commemorate their wedding day more than 65 years ago had been split in half by a terrible storm. It seemed utterly beyond saving, but incredibly, a single golden apple was now growing proudly on a branch that did not have a single leaf. Could this be some kind of sign from the heavens? The old man knew that his wife surely had many unfulfilled wishes. He was certain she still wanted to wear beautiful clothes and stroll through town, but to his astonishment, when he looked in the mirror, the weathered face of an old man was gone. He immediately rushed to tell his wife that he had become young again, only to be equally stunned by the sight of her, as she had transformed in the exact same way. The couple was overwhelmed by each other's youthful beauty and vitality. He immediately pulled her onto the mattress. Overcome with renewed passion, the first thing he said to his wife in his new youthful form was not about having more children. Instead, he made a promise. They would finally go on their honeymoon. That day, their granddaughter came to visit and was startled by the scene in the garden. Her mind was filled with countless questions, but she decided to let it go. From then on, the granddaughter became incredibly attached to her grandfather, even telling him not to cut his hair, but to keep the style so he would look like a K-pop idol. This sparked a rather unusual thought in the narrator's mind about where this might be heading. The grandfather was surprised, as his granddaughter had never behaved this way before, but he decided to play along. She even audaciously asked her grandmother for permission to marry him. At this rate, it seemed that the narrator's wild thoughts might just come true. Mano went home and told her father about her grandparents' rejuvenation, but he did not believe a word of it. Lately, the other elderly folks in the neighborhood had not seen the couple, whose names are Shozo and In, at the park anymore. But then, somehow, the two of them appeared one day, looking as if they would return with brand new, cosmetically enhanced appearances. Shozo made his grand entrance, looking incredibly young and handsome, causing all the old ladies to swoon over him. Next was the appearance of the stunningly beautiful In. Her vibrant presence made one of the old men so flustered he spilled coffee all over his shirt, and when the lovely young In helped wipe it off for him, his blood pressure must have skyrocketed. Their eldest son, Yoshiaki, frequently tried to persuade his parents to move in with his family, arguing that their bodies were reaching their limits. Shozo was adamant, refusing to ever leave the house and land that his ancestors had protected for hundreds of years. This land had been protected by his ancestors for centuries. In, on the other hand, was not too concerned about the location. As long as she was by his side, she would accept living anywhere, even in the most humble of places. The elderly can be quite stubborn. Their daughter-in-law, Cade, was moved to a point of helplessness by their inseparable love. It was a bond that nothing could break. The next day was the first time Cade saw her father-in-law in his youthful form. She was so shocked she dropped the bag of groceries she had just bought from the market. She immediately left the room, stunned by how handsome her father-in-law could be. She immediately ran to tell her husband about this strange event. It was only then that her husband understood why their daughter kept saying she wanted to be her grandfather's girlfriend. Mino would always jump over to cling to her grandfather, no matter how many times her mother reminded her not to. Cade wanted to do the same, but that would create chaos. Her affection led to her grandfather getting a slap from his wife. Ain asked her son, Yoshiaki, if his work was going well, told his mother not to worry too much. She then placed her hand on his head and stroked it, remarking that once you are grown, there is no one left to praise you. Those bygone days remained the happiest of memories. It was then little Mino's turn to ask for a head pat from her grandmother. As for Shozo, he received a scolding for his wandering eyes, which were bordering on inappropriate. She demanded to know who gave him permission to look at any other woman in the house besides her. The sports festival between the North and South towns was approaching. The South District had almost no young men left, so victory always went to the North. This time, however, the South had a savior. Shozo. With his muscular physique, he was immediately chosen as their representative for the sports festival. The day finally arrived. While the South Town's team consisted entirely of seniors over 50, the North's team was full of star athletes from high school sports clubs. Upon hearing that the South's representatives this year were two elderly apple farmers, the other side burst into laughter, but they never expected the couple to be so young and strong. The tug-of-war competition officially began. Both sides were perfectly matched in strength, that is, until In was persuaded by another old woman to cheer on their team in a special way. Though very embarrassed, In agreed to do it, and with just a simple cheer of encouragement, all the men on her team were fired up like raging bulls, securing an instant victory. Although she felt awkward, now she knew that her husband liked that sort of thing. Next up was the three-legged race. The two representatives from the North Town were brothers who had been working side by side for 15 years. They knew each other's physical rhythm perfectly. But how could they possibly compare to the apple farming couple? They had overcome countless hardships together for nearly 70 years. Was there any part of each other they did not understand completely? Shozo knew his wife's movements like the back of his hand. He could even match her speed, their synchronized steps, making almost no sound at all. Victory once again belonged to the South Town, place full of elderly folks who kept winning overwhelmingly. Thanks to the incredible performance of the age-defying duo, the mayor of the North Town was extremely bitter. 70 years ago, Shozo had won In's heart over him, and now he was taking the smiles from his grandchildren's faces. Suddenly, In approached his side to apologize for having won everything. At the same time, she offered a lunchbox for him and his grandchildren to eat to ease their disappointment. Meanwhile, her own husband was being fed enthusiastically by others. As they ate together, In recounted the story of how, years ago, the North Town's mayor had confessed his feelings for her, much to the surprise of his grandchildren. So that was the reason he disliked the other town so much. It was a painful memory from the past that he did not want to revisit at all. A week after the sports festival, he sent his grandson, Soda, to bring a bag of pastries as a return gift for In. However, she happened to be out of the house. Only her granddaughter Mino was there to greet him. The boy blushed and became flustered because he was quite nervous. Mino knew right away that he had a crush on her. She wanted to see how he would act, so she invited him inside, and just like that, the young man found himself inside her home, his heart pounding with nervousness. He could not believe that his classmate turned out to be the granddaughter of his own grandfather's rival. Mino was a popular girl, liked by both the boys and girls in Soda's class. An introverted boy like him had never dreamed that he would ever get to speak with the girl he admired so much. It was a common feeling among the less confident boys. He decided to check his phone to ease the awkwardness, but to his surprise, Mino leaned in close, curious to see what he was doing. With such a clear signal, if he did not make a move, he might as well give up. Little did they know, outside the door, the adults of the house were secretly peeking in. Afterward, Shozo expressed his hope that the two of them would soon give him a great-grandchild. He then entered the room and spoke to the boy very casually, but the other two women in the house were different. They looked as if they were sizing up this potential son-in-law to see if he was good enough. Mino praised Soda, mentioning he was not only good at his studies, but also skilled at sports. Being the star player of the soccer club, her grandfather bluntly asked the boy if he liked anyone, but his wife quickly covered his mouth. Right after Soda left, Mino's mother and grandmother commented that he was a shy, adorable boy. It seemed like the two had never even spoken before. For some reason, Mino looked a bit sad, wishing she could have talked with him a little longer. It seemed this girl was just as smitten as the boy was. Shozo was the only one who happened to overhear his granddaughter's remark. The next day, Mino was told the story of how, back in the day, her grandmother had been the one to propose to her grandfather. Back then, his family situation was very difficult. His father was a very strict, authoritarian man. Shozo was supposed to marry the daughter of one of his father's friends. This led to Shozo getting into a physical fight with his father. A son surpassing his father in this manner was not a good omen for the family. There were times when he felt defeated, wanting only to run away, but In was always by his side. She was very bold back then, even arranging a meeting with the girl who had been set up with Shozo to confront her face to face and claim her man. Both Mino and Shozo were extremely curious and wanted to see her reenact that moment. With no other choice, she reached out and cupped her granddaughter's face, then yelled, "Do not you dare touch my man." Now, Mino admired her grandmother's fierceness even more. Shozo confirmed once again that he had married the right woman. Episode 2. a young boy in this rural area was complaining that being a farmer was so difficult. In this day and age, the only way to avoid staying poor forever was to move to the city to work. Indeed, the young are always full of dreams. Both of them were eager to leave this impoverished region and go to Tokyo to get rich and find girlfriends. They were very anxious to do so. They happened upon a strange girl struggling in an apple orchard that was regularly tended by an old couple. Just one radiant smile from the beautiful woman was enough to capture the young boys' hearts. And it did not stop there. Right after, another handsome man drove up in a truck loaded with apples to pick up his wife. Now, the boys had changed their minds. They wanted to become farmers more than they wanted to go to Tokyo. That is right, every day they diligently visited the apple orchard to gaze upon their future. Today, while cleaning a room, In happened to be staring intently at an advertisement for new, expensive clothes. This scene was accidentally witnessed by her husband, and so, the very next day, on the table, a strange package suddenly appeared. In opened it to find a very fashionable, youthful dress that she had long wished for, but no matter how much she asked, Shozo just claimed he knew nothing about it. Was there a secret admirer in the house that he had to pretend? She just quietly moved closer, pressing herself against her husband's back, and whispered with a smile that he was wonderful last night. This left Shozo feeling deeply satisfied. During dinner, a romantic drama was playing on TV. The male and female leads shared a passionate kiss. While Shozo did not understand what was so great about it, he turned to see In watching intently. Without blinking, after a moment of hesitation, the wife asked her husband for a favor. She wanted him to do the exact same thing to her as what was on TV. Whatever they do, we have to do it even better. After they looked at each other for a long moment, she commented that since they had been together for 55 years, it did not really have the same feeling. Though she said that as soon as he turned away, her true feelings were revealed. It was a truly heart-pounding moment for her. That evening, an old woman from the market stopped by the house. She had some food she wanted to give to In's family. However, when Mino came to the door, she could not understand a single word the old woman was saying. The narrator admits to often facing similar situations. It is either they are hard of hearing, or they think they are. Luckily, In appeared, and her granddaughter immediately asked for her help. Suddenly, the other woman pinched Mino's cheek, exclaiming how cute she was. She must be the same age as my grandson. It was the familiar old trick of trying to set up a marriage, something In was all too familiar with. She immediately hugged her granddaughter and said, "Please do not tease the child. It is far too early for our Mino to be getting married." Now the girl was demanding to marry her grandmother. This girl is Shoji, the daughter of Takehiro, who is the couple's second son. So, to put it simply, she is Mino's cousin. After arguing with her father, Shoji ran away to her grandparents' house to stay, but she could not believe how young her grandmother looked. She remembered how, lately at school, her friends had been bad-mouthing her, calling her boring, saying all she ever did was study. When her father suggested she study medicine in the future, she shouted back, "I am not as smart as you," and so, Shoji could only bury her face in her pillow. Feeling like she had nothing left, she had given up on her father, her studies, and her friends. Her grandmother gently touched her shoulder to comfort her. "You are so young, yet you say you have lost everything. What could you possibly have had to lose?" "My dear," she recalled how the girl used to say her dream was to become a doctor to cure her grandmother. "No matter what anyone around you says, you will always be my wonderful, irreplaceable grandchild." With that, she went to cook all of Shoji's favorite dishes, remembering back in the day. Once again, the couple's honeymoon trip had to be postponed because In fell ill again. She told her husband to go ahead and take their eldest son, Yoshiaki, to the beach, but Shozo steadfastly refused. He would only go if his wife could come along in a swimsuit. Back in the present, In was looking at a beach magazine and complaining about how revealingly the younger generation dressed, but then she remembered that her husband was quite mischievous and liked to see her show a little more skin. What on earth should she wear to please him? As she was pondering, she was startled by Shoji's sudden appearance. She told her grandmother to feel free to show off, because she was naturally beautiful. She encouraged her to wear something that revealed more of her chest, so her grandfather could be completely satisfied for once. Shoji then glanced at her grandfather and chided him. "You are terrible. Just listening to grandma talk for a moment got you all worked up." Afterward, In received a phone call from a strange voice that claimed to be her son. She immediately asked, "Are you sick?" Yoshiaki, the person on the other end, agreed. After a few more exchanges, In realized this was not her son. so she quietly pressed the record button. The person on the line went from complimenting her youthful and attractive voice to asking her to transfer a few billion yen. This serves as a warning against these kinds of simple scams. After talking for a while, she finally delivered the final blow. "I am not your mother, but please feel free to call again if you have any more problems." This left the scammer furious. The very next day, the news reported that the phone scammer had been arrested. It seems In's recording played a significant role, though in real life, that is rarely the case. Not only had her appearance become younger, but her eyesight had also improved. Without needing glasses, In could clearly read the newspaper from a distance. Just then, her grandfather came out, so Mino wanted to put on a little show for him. She pointed to words in the newspaper one by one, tricking her grandmother into reading out the sentence. "I want to sleep with my beloved husband." It is quite something to see this old couple being playfully tricked by their little granddaughter. But just 5 minutes later, the grandmother got her revenge. She pointed at words to make the girl read out, "I have a secret crush on." Luckily, she did not finish the last word. The grandmother thought, "Do not you forget I gave birth to your father, you little rascal." A little later, while watching a romantic drama, Minnow suddenly wondered, back in the day, did you two ever go on dates, or hold hands, or do anything? Her grandmother replied that of course, they never showed affection in front of other people. Every now and then, the couple would go to the local market and buy a lot of vegetables, taking advantage of the low prices, but it made their shoulders ache. Weather was a bit cold that day, which made Shozo wonder why In was not wearing a glove on her other hand. It was simply a test of his awareness. She wanted to see if he would seize the opportunity. However, Shozo was thinking that if he held her hand, it would be like he was just obeying the girl's suggestion. After waiting a while and seeing no movement from her husband, In suddenly noticed that Shozo had let one of his hands hang loose, holding it out as if hesitantly waiting to hold hers tightly, so there was no reason for her not to offer her hand in return. Later, when they got home, she tried to explain to her granddaughter that they definitely did not hold hands. The next day, the couple went to the general hospital where their second son, Takahiro, worked. Though it was unbelievable, the doctor had to confirm that these were, indeed, his parents. When he began examining his mother, he could feel that her breathing was more stable than before, and her once rapid heartbeat had slowed. He remembered back in the day, doctors had discovered cancerous cells in her liver. Even though she had just recovered from gastroenteritis, the reason Takahiro wanted to become a doctor was to save his mother. But in the end, all he could do was refer her to a good doctor to get prescriptions and checkups. Despite studying hard, day and night, all he could do was watch his mother gradually weaken. She would still bring food to his room for him to eat, nourishing him every night. "Keep going, son. You are almost there to saving me." At this moment, Takahiro was crying emotionally, feeling as though all his efforts had finally paid off, even though he had not done anything. In meanwhile, was still remembering the past when her son had told her, "I will cure that disease for you, Mom." Here is a small glimpse into their past. When the couple worked together to nurture the apple tree in their garden, their family grew larger, with 2 sons and a daughter, and the apple tree grew along with them, until the day a storm came and devastated the apple orchard. The old couple still helped each other, trying their best to revive the memory-filled apple tree. No matter what, they could not let it die. And then came the day when a single golden apple grew on the tree. The couple picked it, cut it, and shared it. The husband wanted to place it on the altar as an offering, but his wife argued that it would just rot. Besides, the apple slices looked as if they were inviting her to eat them. It was rare to have apples at this time of year, but surprisingly, this one was incredibly sweet and juicy. The apple tree seemed to think, "Thank you, old couple." Before finally passing on, In opened her eyes and woke up, suddenly finding herself in a strange place. In front of her, an hourglass was floating in mid-air. Then, it suddenly flipped over and moved straight towards her. It seemed as if she was about to be crushed, and surprisingly, Shozo had the exact same dream as his wife. Then he suddenly said, "We have been married for 58 years. Have not we?" Hearing this, I knew immediately that her husband was planning something for her again, but Shozo would never admit it. Knowing he always planned surprises for her, she had secretly prepared a special red rice dish the night before to treat him, but when she opened the fridge, she found a cake. So that is what Shozo had prepared. He always lied, saying he had not prepared anything. In truth, Shozo only ever lied to his wife. If he did not love her, There is no way he would do such things. Episode 3. In the past, after finishing elementary school, Shozo spent all his time working in the fields, so he barely remembered what he had learned. On the other hand, attended an all-girls school in Tokyo. That was a dream for many because there was always plenty of rice to eat and the sinks always had running water. But she got stranded after the war, so she returned to this rural area. The work, covered in mud, was truly arduous, but that was before she met him. The day Shozo reached out his hand to her in the rice field made unrealize that being dirty did not matter if someone cared for you. It was better than a life full of everything but loneliness. And of course, this was a secret she could never tell Shozo. Shoji was asked by her father to bring something to her grandparents that could help prevent memory loss. Who would have thought it was a video game? Back in our day, we only played with marbles and hide and seek. This is the first time we have seen walking zombies. It was their first time seeing a zombie killing game on a TV screen. As expected from old folks playing games, they had the most random questions, but the grandfather was an excellent marksman. Every shot was a headshot. As for the grandmother, she took a chainsaw to the fields and dispatched them one by one. It was surreal. She did not seem scared at all. And so, after just a few days, the two had mastered the game, earning every achievement. Out of the blue, her cousin Mino came to visit, causing the younger girl to show clear annoyance. The older sister rushed to hug the little one as if they had not seen each other in ages. Although they went to the same school, they rarely met due to being in different classes. Mino commented that despite her sharp tongue, her cousin really loved their grandparents. Shoji replied that she did not particularly like them or anything, but just then, her grandfather, who was nearby, overheard her. Although he tried to say he was fine, a crack had formed in his heart. He kept muttering to himself, "She hates me." With no other option, Shoji, blushing, grabbed her grandfather's shirt. She explained that she was only joking and begged him not to hate her. Hearing this, Shozo's mood changed in an instant. Another night, the protagonist once again dreamed of the hourglass. Ever since he became young again, there were still so many things he had not done. With his grandmother, his children and grandchildren had arranged a honeymoon trip for them to Atami, and In's body was now well enough to travel. Lost in thought, he was startled when the hourglass suddenly spun wildly, causing him to fall backward. He woke with a jolt. Shozo had suddenly aged back, but and remained unchanged. She must prefer the younger me, Shozo thought with a hint of insecurity and worry. If she were with an old man like me, it would be like a beautiful jasmine flower planted in a pile of manure. Ain replied, "I do not love your young form or your old form. I love the person named Shozo, so nothing will change between us." It was then that he realized he had become too obsessed with being young again and had forgotten what was truly important. They had to get to Atami, no matter what, even in this body. Still, it looked a bit strange, like a sugar daddy with his devoted young companion. The next day at the clinic, although his body had returned to old age, the muscles from his youth still remained. His kidneys and liver also showed signs of aging, so he was advised not to overwork himself. But in truth, his body aging was normal as he was gradually growing older. The real concern was In. Her current body was as healthy as a 20-year-old's. If she were to revert to her old age, even for a moment, it was feared that In would not have much time left. What In feared was not her own death, but that her husband would have to live for another 70 years in solitude when all their children would no longer be alive, and perhaps even their grandchildren. She did not want to pass away alone. From then on, Ain became even more affectionate with her husband. They looked like a grandfather and his granddaughter. Mino's family came to visit. Everyone was shocked that only the grandfather had aged back. Shozo wanted to arm wrestle his eldest son for a bit to prove that his 20-year-old muscles were still intact. Yoshiaki advised his father not to push himself too hard. "If you win, I will give you something really great." That something was the trip to Atami. He would get a room with a shared bath and an open-air tub. The thought of soaking in it within made Shozo flex every muscle in his body. With a single move, he slammed his son's arm down. Truly, a mischievous man has the devil on his side. For the past few days, whenever he went shopping with his wife, people would stare at them. It was only natural to stare. Even the narrator would judge. The sugar daddy and sweet daughter relationship. It has never been widely accepted by society. Aware of this, Shozo tried to keep his distance from Win. He even told a store clerk that he was shopping with his granddaughter, but In surprisingly denied it, saying, "This is my husband, of course." The clerk looked utterly shocked. He must have been wondering just how rich Shozo could be to marry a girl who looked 18. On the way back, she explained, "I do not want to be anything other than your wife." Ever since they became young again, the couple had been eating black bean mochi every day, which was the husband's favorite. But now, fearing diabetes, Shozo could not eat it anymore, but Shozo still wanted to see and eat it as usual. Although she said she was not hungry, he knew exactly what she was thinking. It was only after he had gone to sleep that she opened it to eat, because if he could not eat it, she could not bring herself to sit and eat it alone. In front of him, she was eating secretly behind his back, but was startled when he suddenly appeared. Shozo knew and was being sneaky for his sake. He advised his wife not to do that anymore. Seeing the look on her face when she ate was the most effective medicine for him. In the end, they still sat and ate together, but Shozo only dared to eat the outer layer. Let us talk about In's past when she was a young woman. After her parents passed away, she lost her status as a wealthy young lady. She had to go work for a relative on her mother's side. Her father, though rich, was disliked by everyone due to his arrogant nature. People took their frustrations out on In to get back at him. A Tokyo resident like her, moving to this rural area, was considered an outcast. The accents of the two regions were very different. Life was difficult even within her own home, so after finishing her work in the fields, In would go sit at the shrine, until one day, an apple farmer named Shozo came to talk to her. He was curious, having seen the girl sitting there alone. Hearing her stomach growl, In was offered some rice balls by Shozo. She was not used to the very salty and sweet food of this place yet. Besides, she told him he should not associate with her because of this. She refused, but Shozo did not care about the rumors. He did what he wanted. It was that simple. He could not just leave a girl to suffer from hunger and thirst, with nowhere to turn. For many days after, Shozo would always stop by to see In on his way home. Then he would just naturally sit right next to her. It was only when Min waved him away that he would apologize and quickly move. Looking at his demeanor, she guessed that he had not received a proper education. She decided to see just how much this man could melt her heart. And up to this point, he had completely melted her heart. It had been a while since he dreamt about the hourglass. Tonight, it suddenly returned in Shozo's sleep. If it was like the previous times, all he had to do was flip it over to become young again. With that thought, he went to push it, only to realize that sand was leaking out and falling to the ground, and sure enough, the next morning, Shozo had become young again. As they sat talking, In trembled as she wondered, "Are we immortal?" But that was not the case, because if sand was leaking out, one day it would be empty. When that happened, who knew what would follow? We are definitely not immortal. We won't live longer than our children and grandchildren. So do not you worry. Based on the amount of sand, we still have a few years of life left. I won't leave you behind to be alone. In's eyes suddenly filled with tears as she hugged her husband tightly. Episode 4. These two young boys were obsessed with the imported cars in Tokyo. It was nothing like this rural area, which was full of ordinary cars and trucks. After all, this region was covered in snow and gravel, so low-riding cars could not possibly get through. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appeared out of nowhere and asked for a small favor. Since the garden would be sprayed with chemicals tomorrow, she asked the two of them to take a detour. Of course, the chemicals were not harmful, so it was up to them. And that was not all. A handsome man riding a super cool Ferrari-like vehicle drove past. It was actually an agricultural chemical sprayer that the farmers would pool their money to buy and use together to save costs. After that, Shozo was called over by young Soda to help his grandfather clean out the warehouse, which made the boy's grandfather furious. Of all the people to ask for help, he had to ask this old man. The second floor contained many items collected from ancient times. It was a real treasure trove. Back in the day, his family were major landowners, so this place was filled with family heirlooms. But he still decided to throw it all away. Keeping it from one generation to the next only took up space, but he suddenly noticed a giant black box, which made his attitude change completely. Inside it was a part of the dowry from his late wife. Memories of his wife suddenly flooded back, making Soda's grandfather want to take some time to reconsider whether he should throw this item away. After gathering all the unwanted items and bringing them down, Soda called the education department of the North Town to have them come and look at the antiques. In the end, the black box from earlier was the only thing his grandfather kept. He was planning to demolish the warehouse because his children did not want to be farmers and had all built houses in the city. Shozo went to sit and talk with young Soda. He asked if the boy had any plans to stay here in the future. The boy was planning to move to Tokyo to try to become a soccer player, but inheriting what his grandfather left behind was not such a bad idea either. No matter what job he chose in the future, he could not forget this place, the place that helped shape who he was. Turning his back on his hometown felt like a betrayal. So, in short, Sota still wanted to maintain his grandfather's farm, and little did he know, his grandfather had heard everything from behind the wall. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. He decided to cancel the demolition of the warehouse, even though he had already notified the construction company. Shoji had gone to the university library, which was open every week for studying, but in the end, she still had no motivation. It was because she had said something that hurt her grandfather. When she saw him about to teach her, Shoji had remarked that he did not even finish high school. She was startled to realize he was standing right behind the bookshelf, doing something. Eventually, her curiosity got the better of her, and Shoji had to sneak a peek to see what was going on. She saw her grandfather sitting and studying books meant for high school students. She remembered her grandmother once saying that it was not that her grandfather disliked studying, but it was due to his family's circumstances. So, if circumstances had allowed, would he have been very good at it? Shoji was always being pushed to study by the adults around her, so she hated it. But now, the only person who could motivate her to study was her grandfather. And so, thanks to him, Shoji managed to rank in the top 9 on her midterm exam. In Mino's class, her friends were gossiping about the hot couple from the south town. They asked Mino if she knew anything. She lied, saying she did not know them, and used the excuse of being busy at home to leave quickly. This started to make them suspicious. Mino did not dare to tell the truth, because she was afraid no one would believe her, so she could only confide in Sota. Mino was very grateful to him, the person who had helped her with her studies, and often gave her advice and encouragement. By the way, since the day he helped clean out Sota's warehouse, her grandfather could not stop praising the boy. She then wondered, "Do you admire a couple like my grandparents?" Sota also acknowledged that they were indeed an ideal couple, so the two of them thought alike. At home, her grandfather always said that Sota was a good kid. He wished he could have him as a grandson. It seemed her grandfather had already accepted him. As they were talking, Sota suddenly asked to use the restroom for a moment. It turned out the young man was just extremely nervous. He told himself it was just a normal conversation. He needed to stop fantasizing about it being a date. With the upcoming cultural festival, Mino's class was setting up a cafe, so she invited her grandparents to come along. The thought of going to school with her husband excited In very much. But Shozo had a schedule to spray the orchard on Saturday, while each week there was only one day they could borrow the sprayer. On Sunday, he had to go for a health checkup, and In would only go if her husband went with her. This meant that neither of them would be able to go. Oh, wait. It turns out Shozo had just misread the schedule, so the two of them could still go to the school with their granddaughter. The night before the festival, In was so excited she could not sleep. It had been a very long time since she had set foot in a school, and she seemed more excited than the children. Then, she was suddenly surrounded by a crowd of students. They asked if she wanted to drink apple juice or eat hot dogs. As a result, some juice was accidentally spilled on her. The girl had to go borrow an outfit from a friend in the fashion design club for her grandmother to wear temporarily. After changing, they all marveled at In's doll-like beauty. As she tried on the different clothes, Shozo remembered back when they were young, his wife had many marriage proposals from men who wanted to get close to her father, including the son of a House of Representatives member, the president of a coal mining company. Back in her all-girls school days, In loved music and played many instruments. His wife in her youth was truly an unattainable flower. After she finished changing, the children called her husband in to see. Shozo was completely captivated by the sight of his wife in a schoolgirl uniform. He was so stunned that he was left speechless by her stunning appearance. After buying food and drinks, the two sat next to each other at a desk in the classroom. She apologized for the feeling of the moment, as if the past was coming back, and she had inadvertently used some old school slang. While talking to Shozo, she then realized that his eyes were the same as when they first met. Back when In was a flower he could not reach, so if the two of them had gone to school together, would it have felt like this? Shozo immediately turned to tease her a little, asking if she liked anyone. In replied very coldly, stating that she was not interested in his type of gentleman. Well, that shut him down completely. He did not know what to say next. She then burst into laughter because the act felt too awkward, but the question he had just asked "Do you like anyone?" was exactly how the man from 70 years ago had thought when he approached her. This made Shozo feel so embarrassed he wanted to hide. Next, the couple visited their granddaughter's cafe, which was set up in a maid cafe style. However, the cafe was quite empty. This was because the class next door had opened a ramen shop with the help of a professional ramen shop owner, and they had attracted all the customers. Their class only managed to get a few male customers because Mino was working as a maid. Immediately, everyone turned their eyes towards the grandfather. They had found something that could attract the female students to their cafe, and the result? Customers flocked to them, even drawing away all the customers from the ramen shop. Most of the customers were elderly women, drawn in by Shozo's service. He made them feel as if they were young teenagers again. He treated them like ladies. Afterward, In went to look at the old yearbooks from the very distant past. She tried her best to find her husband somewhere, but then she suddenly remembered that her husband had never attended high school. She had to apologize to him. She recalled that back in the day, although he loved school, Shozo was severely reprimanded by his father. Firstly, because the family was poor, and secondly, because he was the eldest son, he was forced to continue the family's apple farming tradition. There was a time when Shozo wished he could have continued his education, but now he thought differently. By not going to school, he had gained many precious things. Most importantly, he had met in the time this yearbook photo was taken was also the time Shozo was sitting with her at the abandoned shrine. After talking about their love for a while, the two realized they were being photographed by a group of children because at school, flirting had to be done in discreet places, like empty classrooms or behind the gym. Unlike this old couple, that evening, Soda really wanted to ask Mino to dance at the bonfire with him, but since she was in the room with her grandmother, it was difficult to approach her. In was asking her granddaughter if she was joining the bonfire. The girl replied that she wanted to, but she had no one to dance with. Just then, Soda arrived. He saw the boy peeking into the room, looking extremely flustered with his blushing cheeks. He understood immediately and went in to pull his grandmother out, giving the boy a thumbs up of encouragement before leaving, which made him even more embarrassed. After mustering up some courage, Soda finally dared to enter the room and ask his friend to dance. On the way home, Shozo reminded his wife not to intrude on the children's privacy too much. Sometimes, the duty of adults is simply to watch over them from a distance. Continuing with the dream, the truth is, after wearing the school uniform again at the cultural festival today, In momentarily reverted to the person she was back then. A person from a very long time ago. Now, she needed to return to her old self to meet with the officials at the town hall tomorrow. It was as simple as turning this hourglass upside down, but due to a moment of carelessness, she accidentally hit her head, breaking a part of the hourglass. And so, when she woke up the next morning, In's hair had even turned black. Standing in front of the TV, she wondered why there was someone moving inside this strange board. Then, there was a stove with a fire already lit inside, a cabinet that cooled itself without needing ice. The calendar showed an era that was a world away from her own time, and especially the man who kept calling her grandma just now. In had no idea who he was. It seemed that breaking a part of the hourglass caused her memories to stop in her youth. Episode 5. After waking up, although still startled that the world had moved on by several decades, Ain still believed what Shozo told her was the truth. Based on the ring on her finger, she was very curious to know why she had been the one to propose first, and why she had fallen for him. Therefore, In had a request. She wanted Shozo to win her over once again. He began by introducing her to each new wonder of this world. For instance, this machine was called a rice cooker, which could cook rice using electricity. Besides that, there were still many things that the future had not changed, like the habit of inviting one to eat. She was very surprised to see for the first time the head of the household doing housework. Shozo thought about it and agreed because his father, back in the day, was a patriarch and would never do such things. Later on, Shozo's cooking was quite bad, so he mostly let his wife do it. But apart from that, he could do everything else, and especially after a hard day's work with his wife, he could only enjoy his meal properly then. If he worked alone, he probably would not be able to swallow a single bite of vegetables or noodles. We always share everything. This has been our way of life for decades. That night, Shozo told his wife about the hourglass that had the ability to make them young again, and the very next morning, he had become young again, proving his story, which left In very surprised. but she still could not remember anything, even though she could not remember his voice or his appearance. Seeing him from behind made her feel as though she needed to share that pain with him. This photo showed the products of the couple's life together. The children and grandchildren in the family never fought because they were all his good children. Hearing this broke her heart, because when they found out she had lost her memory, they would surely be very disappointed. Just as she finished speaking, little Mino's family arrived and had to find a way to act normal in front of them, relying entirely on her husband's help. When asked by her son about her health, Shozo replied that he was still as fit as a fiddle. Seeing this, Ain imitated him, replying that she was also super healthy, which made Yoshiaki suspicious immediately. He started telling a story about the day of the high school festival to his son. Mino was starting to like her grandmother's polite and very new way of speaking. On the other hand, was secretly happy to have such a good granddaughter who cared for her grandparents. She pulled the little girl into a hug because she was so adorable. Later in the kitchen, she was planning to cook curry, but back in her youth, and did not know how to cook. Her family had plenty of servants. You must be laughing at me for not knowing how to cook, right? Then, Shozo stood behind her, holding her hand to guide her on how to hold the knife. Just being in this kitchen made her feel a sense of nostalgia. What was it that made her become a better cook when she initially did not know how? Now, it seemed In had understood the reason. It was because of her husband. Finally, dinner was ready. The only issue was the rather large carrot pieces. Yoshiaki was reminiscing about how, as a child, he would show off to his mother whenever he got a perfect score on a test. But when he grew up and started working, he realized just how harsh life could be. No matter how hard he worked, if he did not bring in enough revenue for the company, he would still get yelled at. After his daughter had fallen asleep, Yoshiaki told his parents that his company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Shozo encouraged him, saying that in the worst-case scenario, he could always come back and farm with them, but he would find another way. He could not trouble his parents. If I work very hard and still fail, then I will just work even harder. Ain took his hand and advised Yoshiaki, you do not need to push yourself so hard. You are only human. You are allowed to feel hurt too. If your superiors do not appreciate your good qualities and your hard work, then stand up for yourself. You can always run back here if you are not okay. No matter how old you are, you will always be our son. And so, after a beer, Yoshiaki seemed to transform into a different person, complaining at length about his terrible boss. He even realized that his mother was not his mother. This left him completely surprised, although his mother was still his mother. Yoshiaki felt that something was different. To be more precise, she was like the mother from his childhood. After she stroked his head once more, Yoshiaki was certain that his mother was still his mother. Truly, nothing can get past one's own son. The next day, Shozo took In to the shrine where she had once confessed her feelings. She wanted to reenact what they did back then to try and regain her memories. First, they sat next to each other, and then In slowly and deliberately reached out her hand to take his. The feeling at that moment was clearly embarrassing, so much so that In could not believe she would do such a silly thing. She thought Shozo must just be lying. In the end, they both walked home in awkward silence. Today, the couple went to the hospital to visit In's older sister. She remembered when they were little. Every time there was thunder, she would go to her sister's room and ask to sleep with her because she was scared. But now, her older sister was too old and she could not remember anyone but their mother, so there was no one left in the world who could indulge her selfishness anymore. Then she noticed her husband had been silent the whole time, not saying a word. He stood by her side as if to say, "You are not alone." Finally, In had to clutch her husband's sleeve to ease the feeling of loneliness in her heart. In reality, Shozo was just trying his best to hold it in. In's sister had once been a brilliant pianist. That is why, out of habit, she often sat next to the piano. Although she never played it, unable to bear it any longer, the protagonist approached and began to play. In the past, her sister always let her choose a song, and the two of them would play together. Now, her sister did not remember her younger sibling or their hometown. She might not even know who she herself was anymore, and yet, in that moment, the old woman's trembling hands reached out and touched the keys. Startling In could not believe it. Even with her memory so faded, she could still play the song from all those years ago. It turned out her older sister still remembered her little sister In and their sessions playing the piano together. Although she did not know who the young girl beside her was, she complimented her, saying she played the piano very well. In's tears fell onto the sheet music, but her love for her sister remained strong, and so, They sat and played together for hours. Many weeks had passed, and the protagonist's memories still had not returned at all. Today was the first time she had to stay home alone, as her husband had gone to a neighborhood association meeting. Until now, In still had no romantic feelings for Shozo, and he had never made any move on her either. Plus, the curry he cooked was not very good, which certainly did not help his case. But suddenly, she felt uneasy without him around. Thinking back, over the past few weeks, she had already gotten used to all the modern appliances. So why did she still feel anxious? Just because her husband was away? Why did In long for Shozo to return to her so soon? She was beginning to see his value. Suddenly, a memory of his words, "I will never leave you behind," flashed through her mind. Because all the cracks on the hourglass had been restored, Ayn remembered a memory from when she was 16 years old. At that time, she had confessed her love for him. In truth, it was just a joke. However, because In's relatives had a bad relationship with Shozo's parents, she was forbidden from seeing the young man. But Shozo still believed her confession was real, so he went and bowed his head, begging In's family. And finally, the two were able to meet again. After a period of separation, his face was covered in bruises from being struck by her father. Soon after, Ayn fell gravely ill and was bedridden. Shozo was the one who paid all of her hospital bills. She advised him to stop. "Being with me only brings you misfortune." But Shozo did not care about anything else. "Because the one I love is you." Even if In faced 1,000 years of misfortune, he would bring her 1,000 years of happiness. And in the end, Shozo fulfilled that promise. That is why, as soon as her husband returned home, she ran out from the kitchen as fast as she could. With tears of loneliness in her eyes, she threw her arms around him. All of her memories had returned. The next day, the couple returned to the abandoned shrine. Sitting next to each other, Shozo broke out in a sweat as his wife's hand touched his. This time, In was doing it on purpose. Episode 6. The two grandparents were discussing their upcoming long-term tour. They were quite excited and planned to catch a sleeper train at the station. However, Soda had to inform them that there were no more sleeper trains. This was now the era of the bullet train. The journey would only take 3 hours, whereas in the past, it would have taken 8 hours. The reason Mino asked Soda for advice on her grandparents' honeymoon trip was because he frequently traveled to Tokyo with his soccer club, so he had experience. After all, her grandfather had mistaken a watermelon for a smart card. The couple's daughter had married and lived in Tokyo, but her family was very busy, so if only someone else could take them sightseeing, it would be wonderful. Yes. The more they talked, the clearer their intention became. They wanted to invite their future grandson-in-law to come along. However, Soda could not possibly agree, as he was not part of their family. Then, Shozo whispered into the boy's ear that he could go on a date with Mino there. And so, after a moment of stunned silence, the boy leaned in and whispered back to the grandfather, "Let me go ask my family." But of course, his grandfather would not allow it because he still remembered his decades-long feud with Shozo. Just then, Mino arrived. She politely greeted the grandfather and introduced herself, which made him do a complete 180. He joyfully exclaimed, "My grandson has brought his girlfriend home to meet me." The two young people were clearly uncomfortable, but he kept asking when he would have a great-grandchild to hold. That day, Ayn stopped by the market near the train station to buy some snacks to enjoy on their trip. The city had changed so much. This place was now completely deserted and quiet. She felt a pang of sadness, witnessing how much time had changed things. A few minutes later, customers suddenly started pouring in. It turned out that seeing a girl standing at the market entrance, enjoying a snack, who was as beautiful as a supermodel, made them curious enough to stop by. Rewinding 60 years to a time when this place was still bustling, Shozo often had to see his friends off as they left their hometown for Tokyo to get rich. Outwardly, he always lied to himself, saying it was not a place for him, but deep down, he really wanted to go there. Waking up with a start, it turned out he had fallen asleep in Yoshiaki's car on the way to the train station. Before leaving, father did not forget to give his daughter's friend a friendly warning. If anything happened to his precious plum wine, he would have to prepare for the consequences. Since the day he was born, Shozo had never once left his hometown. Ayn apologized for always being sick, but her husband did not blame her at all. The old couple was so absorbed in their affectionate moment that they almost boarded the wrong train to Hokkaido. While the old couple was busy admiring the scenery passing by the window, Soda offered his friend a snack. and answered some of the grandparents' questions after a short nap on the train in the blink of an eye. They had transformed back into their youthful selves, so much so that the train attendant wondered where these two new passengers had come from after getting off the train. The three of them went straight to the house of Akemi, who was the couple's daughter, Soda. Meanwhile, went to visit his aunt's house, which was also nearby. Akemi had heard the story from her brother, Yoshiaki, but she did not believe it because her mother was too frail. How could she possibly have made it all the way here? As it happened, Akemi had a fever that day, so she kept thinking about the past. Her mother always made her porridge every time she got sick. Every time, it felt like she was in heaven thanks to her mother's gentle nature. But now that she was grown, how could she ask to be pampered anymore? So much so that she even started hallucinating, seeing her mother from the past standing there, touching her forehead. Wait, it was not a hallucination. It was real. After an hour of explanation, Akemi finally believed that her parents had both become young again. Her first time in Tokyo made her father feel as though he were in a foreign country. Earlier, two of them were even asked for photos by a group of high school girls. Akemi had one daughter and two sons. Among them, only one son was still in high school, the rest were all married. Coincidentally, the family of her eldest son, Shinji, came to visit, and Shinji looked exactly like his maternal grandfather, our protagonist, so much so that his son, who was Shozo's great-grandson, was terrified when he saw an older version of his father. But it was not long before the little boy was bursting with laughter at the jokes between his father and great-grandfather. The next day, Mino set off on an outing with Soda. Her grandparents went on a separate outing to a different location. The streets were lined with countless shops selling a wide variety of items, and this area was especially popular with the elderly. The couple stopped by a shop selling belly warmers. The shop owner thought the young man was buying a gift for his grandfather, but no. This young man was already wearing a belly warmer himself. After a bit of shopping, Ain returned to her husband. She wondered what was causing such a commotion over there. It turned out to be her husband, dressed in a series of stylish outfits, an older man, but he still exuded an indescribable handsomeness. At lunchtime, the four of them met up and went to a restaurant, catering to his wife's tastes. Shozo had pre-booked a dessert shop with exquisite sweets. Throughout the meal, Ain kept giggling because it was so delicious enough to make her forget all about her diabetes. Next, they stopped by a photo booth to take a commemorative picture, as expected from the older generation. Their faces were so serious in the photo, Mino had to pull Soda in to take a picture as a model for her grandparents. The boy was quite lucky. Out of nowhere, he got an intimate photo with his crush. And so, Shozo and In got creative, doodling all over the picture. The result was rather quirky. The four of them also did not forget to take a group photo as a family. After a day of fun, they returned home. The great-grandfather had bought some spinning tops as a gift for his great-grandson, but these tops were probably fashionable about 80 years ago. Kids these days are different. The little boy immediately threw a tantrum, refusing the gift. This is Sasuke, Akemi's youngest son, and also the boy's uncle. He explained to his grandfather, "This is the kind of spinning top the little guy likes." The great-grandfather immediately challenged his great-grandson to a spinning top battle. If he won, he would buy him a new toy, which made the boy's eyes light up. He agreed immediately. Sasuke reminded his grandfather that there was no way he could win in this modern game, but do not be so sure. Shozo, with incredible force, sent his great-grandson's top flying out of the arena in an instant, earning him a glare from Min for being so competitive with a child. But in the end, Shozo still bought him a brand new spinning top set. That evening, while the great-grandparents and great-grandson were sleeping, the mother and daughter were washing dishes. Ever since she got married and moved to Tokyo, Akemi had always worried that her mother would think she had abandoned her. All she could do was worry about her mother's health. She then buried her face in her mother's embrace and cried. Ain stroked her daughter's head comfortingly. The next morning, Shoji stopped by her grandparents' house, forgetting that they were on vacation. Of course, people in the countryside have a habit of hiding a key somewhere in the yard, so she quickly found it and opened the door. Inside the house, she kept imagining the scenes of her grandparents treating her so gently. In the past, Shoji always had a sense of unease that one day, the time she had with her grandparents would run out. In a few years, she would become an adult and get married. There would be no one to spoil her like her grandparents did, and by then, her grandparents would probably be gone. All she could do was lament, "Please come back soon." As if through some telepathic connection, Shozo and In immediately sensed her wish. Next day, on the street, they happened to run into someone from a talent agency. He wanted to invite the old couple to do something. It seems their fame had brought trouble to their doorstep. Remembering what Soda had warned them, if people like this approached them, because of their radiant presence, they should just ignore them and refuse. While Lin politely refused, Shozo gave the man a long lecture. "You will never understand my wife." The man continued to praise him. "You, sir, are tall and handsome. You are perfect for a magazine cover." Hearing this, In's attitude immediately changed. She retorted that of course her husband was extremely handsome. Not just his looks, but his soul is beautiful too, so do not you dare dream of showing him off to other women. In the end, the couple refused him by revealing their true age, 80 years old. Episode 7. Finally, the whole family arrived in Atami. The two grandparents cried like rain, moved that their dream had finally come true. This picture of the grandfathers and grandsons looks quite comical. Except for In, who grew up in a wealthy family, the three grandfathers and grandsons were wide-eyed and open-mouthed. Seeing such a magnificent resort, for the first time, she quickly invited her granddaughter to join her in the large bath. Shozo kept stealing glances at his wife, as if he desperately wanted something but dared not say it, and it seemed she noticed, telling him to wait until the grandchildren were asleep. Dinner was a feast of exquisite dishes, which left Shozo, who had never seen such things, completely stunned. He teared up as he ate because it was so delicious. He considered today an exception and would drink the sake his wife poured for him. Soda was feeling a little guilty because this was clearly the grandparents' honeymoon. Yet the men and women were in separate rooms, so he would not get to sleep with his grandmother. He was even getting to eat this food. Mino then told him she was very happy to have him there. Thanks to Soda, she did not feel scared when strangers tried to talk to her in such an unfamiliar place. Shozo told the two grandchildren to try drinking water in a specific way, taking 3 small sips in succession. The kids did as they were told, without understanding why. For those who do not know, this action is a traditional ritual between the bride and groom in a Japanese wedding ceremony. You will understand in the future. Although it was initially decided that the men would sleep in one room and the women in another, suddenly, Mino thought it would be better to let her grandparents sleep together, and the result was that young Soda got to sleep in the same room as the girl of his dreams. He had never in his life dreamed that this day would come, so he had already surpassed his grandfather. Had not he, if Mino's father found out, he would surely be furious with the boy. That morning, she had noticed her grandfather about to hold her grandmother's hand, but then he got shy and could not do it. So perhaps, right now, they were preparing to have another baby. Unfortunately, her guess was way off. Shozo had already fallen fast asleep. Suddenly, the girl turned and asked Soda to try calling her granny, simply because she wanted to experience what her grandmother felt. Her friend immediately got into the role of the grandfather, speaking in the exact same tone. Mino also quickly got into the role of the grandmother, asking her husband to marry her. Then, they switched to calling each other by their intimate names. Just like her grandparents, Soda then called Mino by her name. Just that one name was enough to make both of their faces turn bright red. Over in the other room, though fast asleep, but Shozo was still muttering in his sleep, dreaming about his wife in the bathtub, the naughty man. As for In, she was quite disappointed, having been so excited to bathe with him, only for her husband to fall asleep. In Shozo's dream, the scene was of the couple sitting opposite each other in a hot tub. Shozo expressed his strong desire to look and began to reach out his hand to touch, but in the end, the thing he intended to touch turned into an hourglass, and the result was that he accidentally flipped it over. The consequence was that the next morning, he was the only one who had aged. Shozo tried to explain to his wife that it was because her buns had suddenly turned into an hourglass. It was not his fault. Arriving at the beach, the pure white beauty of the dress that In had been given by her husband attracted the eyes of hundreds of people around them. However, next to this angelic beauty was a muscular monster with a nearly bald head. Shozo challenged Soda to a swimming race out to a distant point. If you can't beat an old man like me, do not even think about marrying my granddaughter. Hearing this, the boy's face became determined. As for In, she was not a good swimmer, so she preferred to sit and collect seashells. But her granddaughter had really grown up, developed in all the right places. Once again, The grandfather drew attention with his swimming, riding the waves and cutting through the wind. Literally speaking, he looked no different from a fish flying over the surface of the sea, and in the end, Sota lost badly. After that, the two grandchildren played volleyball together while the grandparents rested on the sand. The protagonist felt it was a waste not to see his wife's swimsuit, but preferred to sit in the shade. Shozo was truly a faithful man. When he was 58, he liked 18-year-old girls, and now at 80, he still liked 18-year-old girls. Looking around the beach, from the young couples to his own grandchildren flirting with each other, it made Shozo want to show off his wife even more. But for someone who was always bedridden like just enjoying this beautiful time with her family on the beach like this was more than enough, even if it was just sitting next to each other. Afterward, while washing off the sand in the shower room, she accidentally gave the viewers a full view of her stunning bikini. Even before her husband saw it, it turned out that was just shy in that outfit. So she made an excuse not to let Shozo see, but back then, her husband was still on his knees, begging his wife to let him see. Have not you gotten used to seeing me without clothes by now? But how could being unclothed compare to a bikini? Sota bought a drink for Mino, but he found it a bit strange that she was sitting pensively, lost in thought. But when he asked, she just said it was nothing. Afterward, he went over to help the grandparents pack up the tent and blanket. As for the reason Mino had a strange reaction, it was because she had looked up the 3 sips of sake custom online and now understood what it meant. It seemed the young lady had started to become curious about wedding matters. That evening, back at the inn, the two kids were playing table tennis together. Their record was 20 consecutive hits. Mino invited her grandparents to play, and amazingly, Shozo and perfectly synchronized for 10 minutes straight. They did not miss a single ball, so much so that all the other guests in the inn had to stop and watch with wide eyes. The two of them even played at an incredibly fast pace, without needing to move much except for their heads and hands. In the end, playing sports so intensely made them break out in a sweat. So, the grandparents went to the bath. Shozo asked again, "Are you sure you want to bathe with my old, worn-out body?" He felt a little embarrassed. Of course, In was still very comfortable with it. The old couple sat and talked about many things. They imagined what it would be like if they were soaking in this hot tub when they were both old. It would surely feel very strange. Amidst this happiest moment of his life, Shozo was silently praying to the gods to let him be selfish for just a little longer. The next day, everyone went to visit the shrine near the inn. Ain suddenly noticed her husband fiddling with something at the place where wishes were hung. Very secretively, Mino and Sota quickly decided to write a wish together to hang up for good luck. What he wanted was to play in the national soccer tournament. As for her, she was so simple, she only wished for a good grade on her test. But that was just the front. On the back, Mino had also written a wish to return to Atami with the person she liked one more time. Ain finally found her husband's wish. It was a prayer for the well-being of the whole family. Strange. What was there to hide about that? But as soon as she turned it over, she was startled and amazed. Over here, Shozo was hoping his wife would not see it, but it was too late, because what he had written was a wish to be her husband again in the next life. She was glad that In wished for the exact same thing. Behind the shrine, there was a giant tree, said to be 2,000 years old. This place was famous for the belief that if you just walk around the tree, your lifespan would be extended by 1 year. The old couple immediately decided they would walk around it 1,000 times. Sota did not seem too interested in it, because he was always confident in his own health. But as he stood there, his friend kept staring at him, making Sota feel shy. When Mino invited him to walk a lap together, the boy quickly agreed. In truth, the wish that, deep down in his heart, he wished for was to be with Mino, not just as ordinary friends, but as someone important to her. The two young people's hands slowly reached out and gently touched. The grandparents, watching from afar, could not contain themselves. They were already eagerly anticipating another great-grandchild. But Sota was a bit shy. Just touching his friend's hand made him jump back. He remembered confessing to Mino the night before that, even if he did succeed in becoming a soccer player, he still wanted to give back to the hometown where he grew up. But Sota did not know that the girl he had always admired in class actually admired him greatly, because Mino still had not figured out her future. While Sota already had serious plans, After thinking about her dream for a while, she saw an image of her grandparents farming. Though it was hard work, but truly, her grandparents' life still made her feel envious. Minho slowly approached her sleeping friend and gently placed a kiss on his forehead as if to confirm her feelings. Back in the present, Sota did not understand why Minho kept staring at his face, which made him very shy. It was because she was remembering what happened the night before after secretly kissing him. The girl's face turned beet red with embarrassment, recounting a bit of the past. Shozo's father had been a difficult man in life, and even in death, he left behind a huge debt for the protagonist to shoulder. As a consequence, he was forced to sell half of his fields and apologize to his wife, once again having to postpone their honeymoon, but he promised he would definitely take her one day. I will make a lot of money to cure your illness, and then we will go on a trip. But then they had 3 children, and the couple's finances were no longer enough to go. Her illness was never cured either, and yet, even at the age of 80, he still managed to fulfill his promise of a honeymoon. At some point, Ain gently placed a warm blanket over his hand, hiding the fact that she was holding his hand. But of course, the 2 kids in front of them were only pretending to be asleep. They saw everything. Episode 8. She happened to pick up a library card. She returned it to the young man, who seemed to be frantically searching for something. She was suddenly taken aback when she saw the book in his hand. Mysterious Legends of Rejuvenation. As they talked, he learned that the girl wanted to study pharmacy, which was why she was here studying for the exam. The young man introduced himself as Satoshi, a second-year pharmacy student. He had noticed her curiosity about the book on Mysterious Legends of Rejuvenation. Satoshi explained that since ancient times, there have been many stories about the elderly becoming young again. It was an event that only happened once every 1,000 years. That was currently Satoshi's research topic, because, who knows, maybe someone nearby was rejuvenating right now. Which startled Shoji. One small reason she chose this field was because her father was a doctor, but the main reason was her grandparents. Their lives had been through so much hardship, but they always prayed for the family's health. That is why it was time for Shoji to repay them, so she would never dare to tell her grandparents directly. But little did she know, Shozo was standing behind the bookshelf, having heard everything long ago. And so, when she got home, the girl did not understand why her grandparents were sniffling and hugging her. The next day, Yoshiaki went to his parents' house to talk about how, lately, Minho had been acting strangely. She was always coming home late and always avoided talking about it. Changing the subject, Shozo and In understood immediately. She must be secretly meeting up with that young boy Sota. Then Yoshiaki suggested that his daughter might be getting involved in some strange cult, or perhaps dating some loser behind his back. In the first few episodes, this father seemed quiet and unemotional, but in this scene, he was completely different. He even imagined a scene where his beloved daughter, for the sake of a boy, would forget about her old man, and one day, she might get her heart broken by her husband. Yoshiaki even thought so far ahead that young people today have easy access to information online, so it is not impossible that Minho's innocent soul had been corrupted by adults, pushing her into the dark side of society, and had to quickly reassure her son and subtly remind him, back in the day, you were much more of a troublemaker than she is. This left Yoshiaki speechless. The person who helped him turn his life around was none other than his wife, Cade. That afternoon, 2 elementary school kids stopped by the apple orchard. They asked the couple where the old man and woman had gone, as they had not seen them lately, because they used to see them taking care of this apple orchard all the time. So they were quite curious. Shozo quickly made up a story that the old couple was sick, so they were taking care of it for them. In was truly moved because the children were so good. They spoke politely and respectfully. She wanted to put the kids' minds at ease. So that night, she quickly flipped the hourglass back over. The next day, on their way home from school, the 2 boys were a bit sad, thinking the old couple must be very sick, but then they suddenly appeared right in front of them, which immediately lifted the children's spirits. This morning, Minho went to school, but forgot to bring the lunch her grandmother had cooked. It was not until she was on the train that she realized her mistake. Minho was very sad because she only got to eat her grandmother's cooking a few times a month. In calculated that it would take about an hour to get to her granddaughter's school by train, but her husband was out in the fields with the truck, so the only option left was the old, battered bicycle. Minho was still sitting there, heartbroken, when suddenly the whole train car erupted in commotion at a strange sight. It was her grandmother, riding her bicycle as fast as the wind, even keeping pace with the train, just to bring her granddaughter her lunch. And from that day on, Mino's grandmother became famous throughout the class. Today, as usual, Shoji went to the university library to be tutored by her upperclassman, Satoshi. He got so absorbed in teaching that he accidentally used his at-home dialect with her. He explained that he was used to his hometown dialect from living with his grandmother. Shoji sat there awkwardly, remembering how at home her cousin always asked her if she liked anyone. Mino guessed that her type was a quiet person, like her grandfather, but Shoji vehemently denied it. Back in the present, she asked why he wanted to research the rejuvenation of the elderly. Since there was no one else around, Satoshi no longer hid it and told her the truth. His grandparents had suddenly become several decades younger. It was because they saw a beautiful golden apple growing on a tree, so they ate it. And the result was what happened the next morning. Satoshi took Shoji to his home to see for herself, which made them think the girl was his girlfriend. Since his parents' divorce, he had always considered his grandparents his closest relatives, so he was determined to study hard to repay their kindness. Shoji also realized that her upperclassman was researching this topic for the sake of the people he cherished, but what surprised them most was that she did not react with surprise at all. Instead, she believed him immediately. With that, she immediately took Satoshi's grandparents to meet her own. Both sides were completely shocked, unable to believe there was someone else in the same situation, so they had to have a drink. Satoshi's grandfather, Hajime, complimented Shozo's wife, saying she was truly beautiful. My wife, on the other hand, is not cute at all. Shozo then complimented Hajime's wife in return, saying she was also beautiful. Before they knew it, the conversation had shifted to their grandchildren, speculating that they would soon be getting married, which made Shoji very embarrassed. Satoshi, however, was happy that his grandparents finally had someone to talk to. Shoji remarked, "So, in the future, we will also become a couple like them, won't we, old?" Hearing the phrase made the young man's face turn red with embarrassment. A second later, the girl also realized she had just said something that could be easily misunderstood. She meant it metaphorically. Satoshi's grandmother, Setsu, told a story about when she worked at an inn. She was always surrounded by strange men who would ask her to pour them drinks and dance for them. Luckily, at that time, she was saved by the man in the next room, and she started dating him from then on. No man in this world could ever defeat Setsu's husband. Hearing this, In's competitive spirit flared up, and she also started listing all of Shozo's good qualities, insisting that there was no way her husband could be second best in the world. Setsu continued to retort, "Hajime is very intelligent and kind. He is a man of few words, but deep down, he is always thinking about his wife." In would not back down. "My husband is more than just kind, he is thoughtful, always helping out and thinking about me 24/7. And so, the two wives made their husbands compete in 3 events. Truly, women can be complicated. Shozo thought it was just for fun, that winning or losing did not matter. But one look at In's face showed there was nothing entertaining about it. They even called a neighbor over to be their referee. The first competition was tug of war, to bring honor to their beloved wives. Whoever reached his wife first would win. The 2 wives cheered on their husbands. When his wife called him a strong man, all the memories of the past half-century flooded back to Hajime. He gathered all his strength and pulled. The same went for Shozo, because this was a battle for survival, not as simple as the sports festival. In the end, our protagonist succeeded, reaching his wife's side first, but unfortunately, in her excitement, had broken the rules, stepping out of her designated spot, and so her team lost. The second competition was a blindfolded food tasting. This was a local dish consisting of eggs and miso soup on a scallop shell. The 2 men had to guess which dish was cooked by their wife. As soon as he took a bite, both Shozo and Hajime could not tell the difference. The flavor and texture were exactly the same. It seemed they used the same kind of seasoning. The situation was critical, but then Shozo had a realization: if the 2 flavors were the same, then were not they made by the same person? So he gave his answer: both of these were cooked by his wife. And he was absolutely correct. After that, In blindfolded her husband and had him try the other portion, and Shozo immediately guessed that it was not cooked by his wife. This made Setsu jealous, and she made her husband do the same, but Hajime was too shy. The final decisive competition was a test of intelligence. However, The two wives argued endlessly, unable to decide which event to compete in, like puzzles or chess. The referee had to ask, what is the purpose of this competition? Anyway, simply put, they just wanted to show off how wonderful their husbands were. This made the neighbors scold them, saying that In loved Shozo and Setsu loved Hajime. Victory will never belong to those who compare the ones they love. He also had a wife, but he did not care if he was the worst person in the world. As long as the one he loved was the happiest, that was enough. While he was engrossed in his lecture to the two old women, by sheer coincidence, his own wife arrived. Once again, she was captivated by her beloved husband, and so the three couples had a party together until midnight. The next morning, Shoji asked her grandmother to teach her how to cook. However, her grandmother only listed dishes for old people, while the dish she wanted to learn was fried chicken. The girl explained that the reason she wanted to cook was because she had to study all weekend and needed something to eat. Nice try, but you can't fool your grandmother. Before now, Shoji had never eaten fried food because she hated grease. Witnessing the scene before her made In imagine the girl as a grown-up, but unfortunately, she would not have much time left to see that come true. And it turned out the reason Shoji wanted to cook was for a boy, but she still lied, saying it was just leftovers. The girl even asked what other dishes the upperclassmen liked. Episode 9. The grandparents were watching a horror movie that was popular among Mino's generation, while the grandfather was not scared at all. The grandmother was praying that the ghost would not climb out of the TV. She tried all sorts of tricks, but still claimed she was not scared. She even saw the door slightly ajar and had to close it tightly. That whole night, just because of a pattern on the ceiling, she could not sleep at all. In the end, In had no choice but to jump to the other side of the bed and lie against her husband to sleep. The next morning, Shozo felt a numbness in his left arm, but did not know why. The other day, he had received some apple seeds as a gift from Hajime, so even though it was not apple season, the grandparents could not just throw away someone else's gift, so they decided to plant them temporarily. Mino suddenly remembered her conversation about the future with Soda the other day, so she asked her grandparents for a few seeds to plant a tree to celebrate her birthday. Next week, Shozo had to remind her that an apple tree has a lifespan similar to a human's, so was she sure she wanted to take care of it. Mino knew that, but the thought of having a tree grow up with her felt wonderful. She began to think about her future being tied to farming. It is just that the person she admired was pursuing his dream so seriously. She did not want to be left behind, so the next day, Mino immediately called Soda over to help her dig the soil to plant the tree. It was connected to farming. It is just that the person she admired was pursuing his dream so seriously that she did not want to be left behind. And so, the next day, Mino immediately called Soda over to help dig the soil to plant the tree. Perhaps this tree will live a very long time, even when we have grown old. By then, the children will be gone, and the elementary schools around here will be gone too. Or maybe even the people living around here will be gone. It would feel so lonely. Glancing at her friend, Mino blushed and looked down because she had just realized that her grandparents had planted their apple tree to commemorate their wedding. So, could this tree be? Just as she finished that thought, Soda spoke up. When we grow up, can I come back to this place? Although by then, Mino would probably be married and have moved somewhere else. Right? But no. The girl turned and replied very innocently, I will wait. Both of them blushed, and a moment later, Mino wondered to herself if that was a confession. And little did she know, her grandparents had just enjoyed a very satisfying meal because In wanted to organize a festival like in the old days. Shozo went to ask the town chief about it, and so, Mino was trying on her grandmother's old yukata in anticipation of the upcoming summer festival. Even her aunt Akemi had worn this outfit when she was young. The girl tried to persuade her grandmother to wear a yukata. However, Ain steadfastly refused, which made Mino pout. She immediately called her mother to ask if she had any spare yukatas for her grandmother to borrow, and the result was that when Shozo returned from work, what greeted him was the sight of his adorable wife. His eyes revealed a mischievous glint. The old man, the evening of the summer festival arrived. Children and families were out and about, creating a bustling crowd. The old men were sitting and drinking together because she had to socialize. Ain felt a little sad, but she would probably wait until midnight because happiness is worth waiting for, though she told herself that her heart still ached, even though she was not young anymore. And at that very moment, Shozo appeared, having slipped away from the drinking party early. which completely changed In's mood. Arriving at the festival, she kept staring at a couple eating candy apples together, but when her husband asked if she wanted candy, she refused. In had never been one to spend extravagantly, so the desire to buy something felt like a guilty pleasure. That notion had been ingrained in her by her former relatives. Shozo continued to ask if his wife liked candy and strawberries. In even analyzed that spending 500 yen on a strawberry candy apple would be quite expensive compared to making it herself, but in the end, after being persuaded by her husband, she happily accepted. Next, they played the stuffed animal shooting game, unfocused solely on a bear, because it looked a lot like her old husband. The shop owner had set the prizes based on the weight of the stuffed animals with years of experience, so if you did not shoot multiple times in one turn, there was no way to win a prize. But then, she saw Shozo also pick up a gun, looking very serious, wanting to help, which started to make the shop owner nervous, and surprisingly, the couple both hit the target in a single turn. It was because Shozo had timed his shot to pull the trigger at the exact same moment as In, so they only needed a second shot to succeed, winning the bear wearing a belly warmer. Shozo used to be a member of a hunting group, so it was easy to understand how he could do that. The girls around them even commented that the person carrying the bear was so cute, it looked like a baby. The only problem was that when they brought two home, the grandchildren fought over them. 3 hourglasses were informing In of the number of days she had left to live. When two people love each other and one passes away first, the one left behind will surely have to live the rest of their life with overwhelming loneliness. Snapping back to reality, after remembering what she had heard in her recent dream, In's face turned pale, believing that the amount of sand in the couple's hourglasses was surely not equal, but Shozo realized and told her he had the exact same dream. Taking In's hand, he asked, "How much longer do you have? It is okay if you do not want to say." After a few moments of silence, she leaned in and whispered in his ear, "I only have about 7 days left." With that, the couple leaned against each other and sat in silence, not showing any shock. After all, the feeling of impending death had been within for about a month already, so living this long was nothing short of a miracle for her, though on the outside he pretended to listen calmly to his wife's final words. Deep down, Shozo's thoughts were different. He prayed to the gods to grant him a miracle one more time. Suddenly, the shrine where the two were sitting flashed, and a light shot straight up into the sky. This made Mino, from a distance, notice that the shrine seemed to be glowing. It seemed the supreme deity had heard his wish and transported the old couple to a space, just like in his dream. A voice spoke from the scales, "I am the local god of this shrine. I will grant your wish, in thanks for the two of you always coming to clean this place and keep it beautiful. If it were not for Shozo and In, the local god would surely have disappeared long ago. But I am just a god of a rural area, so to change fate, there must be a trade-off. The god can only shorten someone else's lifespan and give it to her. If that is the case," Shozo agreed to the exchange and promised to keep it a secret, not telling his wife. He wanted to give half of his remaining time to Win. Waking up with a start, In did not know when she had fallen asleep. She had just had a very strange dream. It was that, for some reason, sand from nowhere was pouring into her hourglass. So, In's remaining time had been significantly extended. Shozo thought to himself that if his wife found out the truth, she would surely not forgive him. But he could not let her go or let her leave him behind. "We must end this together. So until then, let us enjoy the beauty of this world together." Satoshi was telling Shoji the story of long ago. A loving couple once lived near this shrine. One day, famine and pests struck, causing almost the entire village to perish, but that couple still watered the sacred tree, a resource even rarer than life itself. A few days later, the sacred tree bore golden apples, and the village's hunger was no more. The power of that couple's prayer to this day still surrounds this land. However, Shoji was out for fun, not to listen to legends, so she turned away from him. Pretending to be annoyed, she had gotten him all excited. When she suddenly called and asked him out, she was starting to feel envious and wanted to be like her grandparents. Satoshi bought her a chocolate-covered banana to make up for it, hoping she would be less angry, but she might not have wanted a store-bought banana treat. After a few seconds of glaring, the girl accepted the imitation treat. Although deep down, she was not that angry. Sure enough, a week passed and In was still alive, which made her sigh in relief and lean her head on his chest. Then she sobbed, rushing to hug her husband because she had been so scared. The thought of dying and leaving him alone made her feel as if her heart was breaking. Shozo hugged his wife comfortingly. From now on, Just like always, we will continue to live as we normally do. Episode 10. Mino was explaining Halloween to her grandparents, what it was, and invited them to join in. And so, the day arrived. The little girl was dressed in a super cute witch costume. Soda was a dinosaur. As soon as he opened the grandparents' door, he shouted loudly, "Trick or treat," and was startled when Shozo, and in scary costumes, jumped out to scare them. It scared the two kids half to death. Mino even fainted on the spot. Cut to another night. These two men, following a rumor about a truck that dealt with cars around a certain household, had come to this rural area. That truck was often referred to as the ghost truck of the southern mountains. Suddenly, they saw a truck driving right in front of them. It was probably the only one driving on this road, so they overtook it. The guy even casually flicked his cigarette butt into Shozo's apple orchard, which made him angry. Today, Shoji came over to visit and wondered why her grandfather had been coming home late. It was because he was patrolling the apple orchard due to frequent thieves stealing apples from the outside. Since Shozo started patrolling, the number of reckless drivers dropped significantly. The two young men from before suddenly realized that the truck was now recklessly chasing after them. "There is no way we are losing to whatever demon is hiding in that truck." He then showed off his impressive drifting skills. But no one was a match for the guardian of this apple orchard. Shozo executed a spectacular drift in his truck. A truly impressive feat. There was no mistaking it now. This was the demon with the truck from the rumors. Despite flooring the gas pedal, they could not shake the truck off their tail. What on earth had he done to the truck's engine? Shozo recalled the day he took his truck in for repairs. The mechanic had also fine-tuned the engine for him to make transporting many crates of apples more efficient. But he came with a warning. If he drove too fast, he might skid, so he should be careful. The road ahead was now blocked by stacked apple crates, stacked on top of each other, so the two guys could only take the corner recklessly. And seizing that opportunity, Shozo quickly overtook them. Now they were scared for life. The next day, the story of the ghost truck in the apple orchard was on TV. Of course, Shozo could not possibly tell his wife that the speed-loving ghost was actually him. Today, this old man was teaching a course on air rifles for dealing with pests. However, the old ladies were all flocking around, insisting that Shozo teach them instead. Thanks to him, every single one of them became an expert shot. They had formed a squad of elderly sharpshooters. On a day of torrential rain, Mino and Soda rushed into the shrine to take shelter. While on their way home from school, seeing his friend wringing out her shirt, the boy had to look away. Although it was very cold, Soda still took off his jacket and gave it to Mino to keep warm. After a few moments of silence, she softly praised him, telling him he was a very kind person. Suddenly, a terrifyingly loud clap of thunder boomed, making Mino jump in fright and accidentally leap into Soda's arms. She took out her phone, intending to call her grandfather for a ride, but unfortunately, there was no signal here. Over on his side, the boy witnessed a truly magical sight. The lightning flash had just recreated the image of the grandfather and grandmother in their youth, looking just like the two of them when Shozo had draped his outer coat over in to keep her from the cold. However, her expression back then was still a bit cold. The kids tried calling out to their grandparents a few times. They did not seem to hear anything at all, just continued to lean against each other. Ain confided, "My family chased me away again when they found out I was seeing you." And as for Shozo, his father had just arranged a marriage for him with another girl, so it was very likely that today would be the last day they would see each other. If that was the case, then In pulled her lover down, intending to do something bold so that when the other girl found out he had done this with another woman, she would surely leave him. And so, faced with In's extreme boldness, Shozo was completely powerless to resist. In the middle of a sacred shrine, she was not afraid of any divine punishment. She just went ahead with her intentions, leaving the children's innocent minds completely corrupted. Mino even had to cover Soda's eyes. Arriving back at Mino's house, she asked her grandmother if it was true that the two of them used to visit the shrine often, and the answer was, yes. That is absolutely right, my dear. After the kids left, the grandparents wondered. We were supposed to take that secret to our graves. How on earth did she find out? Up in the room, Mino showered first, but when she finished and told Soda it was his turn, he stubbornly refused to shower. His face was already beet red. What else could the poor guy do? Ever since witnessing that scene earlier, the two of them just sat in silence on the bed, not daring to say anything because it was too awkward. Soda was wondering if he could be as proactive and decisive as her grandmother had been. Definitely not, he thought. Mino would hate me. But when he turned to look at her, his friend's expression was strange. It was as if she were inviting him, challenging him to try. Mino was remembering how her grandmother had confided. She was very envious of the younger generation because their lives were so free, without restrictions. So, you should live your life to the fullest while you can. Those words were etched deep in the girl's mind. So, she spoke up, reminding him of how Soda had protected her during the thunderstorm earlier. That had made her very happy, because his instinctive reaction was to protect her. With that, she proactively leaned her head on Soda's shoulder. At that moment, he could not move. His whole body was frozen like a statue. But the girl quickly noticed a noise coming from outside. It was her grandparents, secretly spying on what was happening in the room. She went out to give them a scare and told Soda they would talk again later. Cut to another night. In was on a train and was woken up by the conductor. When they reached the final station, in the past, this train was always bustling with people, but now, she was the only one on the entire trip because hardly anyone took the train anymore. But strangely, the very next day, a lot of old ladies boarded the train. It turned out In had invited them to arrange a meeting. Some of the old ladies were even handing out flyers. In walked by and said, "This town is still very lively, so we still need you." Conductor, on a winter night, with snow covering the road, the old couple was driving but got stuck in a traffic jam because the car at the very front could not see anything. Ahead was just a dangerous, blinding white. In that critical moment, Shozo surged ahead, his headlights cutting through the whiteout to guide the other driver because he had been driving on this snowy road for 60 years. So even if he could not see anything, he could still drive with millimeter precision. The next morning, before the truck could even be loaded with apples, it was already covered in snow. Ain took out a pickaxe and started breaking up the snow in front of the house. Unlike before, her body now got cold easily, and her strength was limited, but now, all she had to do was take off layers of clothing to cool down and then continue to work hard. A little later, when her husband returned, he could not stop staring at his wife's body, revealed as sweat soaked through her clothes. Episode 11. A few days before the new year, the whole family gathered at the grandparents' house. The eldest son, Yoshiaki, and his wife arrived first to help out. He still wanted to show his wife that he was young and energetic, and the result, after just one swing, his body could not take it anymore. In the end, he had to let his father do it for him. This old couple worked so well together, like a well-oiled machine. All by himself, he built a giant snowman for Mino to admire, just because she praised him, saying he was amazing. A little later, Shozo again pushed the natural limits of his body to make a bear wearing a belly warmer. Next, he asked his granddaughter what Soda's favorite character was, and the girl showed him a phoenix dragon from a game. The daughter, Akimi's family, as well as her grandson Shinji, and the two mothers and the great-grandson were on their way. The little boy thought his great-grandfather's garden was super cool, although it looked more like a pick-along than a phoenix dragon. And finally, the family of the youngest son, Takahiro, arrived, bringing along the mother's older sister. As soon as he saw Shoji, Shinji's son, called her over to play a game of 100 poets with him and his cousin Mino. In's sister was the same as always sitting quietly in one spot, as if lost in thought. The only thing she remembered at that moment was playing this game as a child, and always being praised by her mother for being so smart. So, her hands and feet moved instinctively, climbing out of her wheelchair to play along, while her memory might be slow in other areas. When it came to this game, the old woman was incredibly sharp and quick. 3 children could not keep up with her, all because she wanted more praise from her mother. On New Year's Eve, everyone sat down to eat sushi together. Suddenly, the great-grandson's behavior changed strangely. He started giving his great-grandfather a massage. His great-uncle, Suzuki, seeing this, also asked for a massage, but the boy refused. Mino was also turned away. He then turned to massage his great-grandmother first. This started to make Shoji suspicious, and sure enough, the thing the little boy was aiming for was the New Year's money gift. But in the end, his great-grandfather only gave him 5,000 yen and a library card, which made him pout, and no one understood why. While the grandfather's 3 unmarried grandchildren all received generous money gifts. On New Year's Eve, the men sat and drank. In's sister and the little kids watched a horror movie, and the rest of the women sat and chatted. Shoji's mother was very worried because, lately, She and her husband had been a bit strict about their daughter's college entrance exams, which had caused her to become quite distant. After a few words of encouragement from her mother-in-law, she was moved to tears. Next, Kate also confided in her about the hardships of her nursing career, just to be comforted and encouraged by her mother-in-law's head pats. A little later, when Shozo went into the kitchen, he did not understand why, from his daughter to his daughters-in-law and even his granddaughter-in-law, all saw his wife as a savior. Early the next morning, the two main characters received a pile of New Year's cards, as many as 400, because the older generation could not communicate as easily as the young. These cards were like a way of saying, "I am still alive." Among them was a card from the Association of Elderly Mothers who were fans of Shozo. After that, the families of the children and grandchildren all drove home. Only little Jack stubbornly refused to leave the old folks. Even though he had a black-haired version of his great-grandfather at home, he still complained. In had to give him the bear with the belly warmer, as if to say, "We will always be with you." Before he would finally listen, Shozo himself told the boy not to cry. But when his children and grandchildren had all returned to their normal lives, he burst into tears and had to be comforted by his wife. But it was okay, because not long after, Mino and Soda came to visit the apple orchard and helped the grandparents prune the trees. Shozo whispered to ask how things were going with Mino lately. The boy got flustered and said, "We are making good progress, unlike your grandfather, who keeps rushing me to get married." Mino had also decided to take care of the apple tree she had planted. I knew immediately that the girl wanted to be with the boy very much. The two had even progressed to the point where they were calling each other by their first names, which made her have to remind them not to do that in front of her grandparents. And then chimed in, "Well, it looks like this is a failure. Kids, run. Kids, it is likely. 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 Alright? Alright? Alright, okay. Let us break it up before everything is revealed." But in reality, that was just an excuse to go for a walk and let the kids be themselves. Shozo was still very smooth with his flirting. "That mountain is beautiful, but not as beautiful as you." After a short walk around the apple orchard, the couple leaned against a tree trunk to rest. It was so peaceful and warm. The grandparents were happy that Shoji had finally decided to apply to medical school, with her grades gradually improving thanks to Satoshi's tutoring. The boys' grandparents, every time they went to the hospital, would also just gossip about their grandson and Dr. Takehiro's daughter. Their daughter Akemi was now independent, so she had more time to call her parents. Yashiki had found a new job, no longer suffering under his old terrible boss who can predict the future. After countless idle chats about their children and grandchildren and the old folks around town, Shozo asked his wife, "If your dreams could come true, what would you wish for?" Ain replied, "My dream has already come true," and so had Shozo's. The hourglasses of both of them had officially run out to the last grain. At the same time, amidst the scene of the couple sitting with their heads resting on each other, drifting into sleep in the apple orchard, their hands were still tightly clasped. A little later, Mino and Soda came to call their grandparents for dinner. They received no answer because they were smiling peacefully, having passed on to the heavens together. Thus ended a long journey. Cut to 50 years later, this old couple was standing and admiring the apple tree that the couple had nurtured together when they were students. Now, it had grown a golden apple. Needless to say, everyone surely knows who this couple is, right? The narrator muses, "I wish I could have a wife like In and 10 golden apples."